We live in a world where many people prioritize physical health while quietly neglecting the care of their emotional well-being. But the truth is, emotional health is not optional. It is essential for a meaningful and fulfilling life. To care for it, we must first embrace a simple but powerful truth: vulnerability is strength. When you allow yourself to be seen as you truly are, without masks, without pretending, you open the door to deeper healing. Hiding your struggles may feel safe, but authenticity is where courage begins. Equally important are boundaries. They are not walls to shut people out, but gates that determine what you allow into your life. Every no you give in order to protect your peace is also a yes to your well-being. Boundaries create space for respect, balance, and inner stability. Shame, on the other hand, is one of the greatest threats to emotional health. It convinces us that we are unworthy of love or belonging. The only antidote is empathy. When you share your story with someone who listens without judgment, shame cannot survive. This connection is medicine for the soul. Along this journey, self-compassion must be your anchor. Too often, we speak to ourselves with harshness we would never direct at a loved one. Treat yourself with kindness, especially when you stumble, for mistakes are not proof of failure. They are evidence that you are alive, learning, and growing. Finally, emotional health thrives in courageous conversations. Speaking honestly, even when it's uncomfortable, builds trust and deepens relationships. Avoiding difficult discussions might feel easier, but true connection only grows in the soil of truth. So, to care for your emotional health is to choose courage over comfort, empathy over silence, compassion over criticism, and truth over fear. The more you nurture your emotional well-being, the stronger, freer, and more alive you become. When people hear the word vulnerability, many immediately associate it with fragility, with being overly sensitive, or with exposing oneself to the possibility of hurt. Culturally, we are taught to put on armor, to toughen up, to keep our emotions in check, and our weaknesses hidden from the world. Yet the very act of living openly, of allowing ourselves to be truly seen, requires immense courage. Vulnerability is not the absence of strength. It is the deepest demonstration of it. To be vulnerable is to acknowledge that life is uncertain, that love is risky, that dreams may fail, and yet still choose to show up fully. Think about the moments in your life where you felt the greatest sense of connection or fulfillment. Perhaps it was telling someone you loved them for the first time, even without knowing if the words would be returned. Perhaps it was applying for a job you weren't sure you would get, or sharing a creative piece of yourself. Your art, your writing, your music, with the world, knowing that criticism could follow. In each of these moments you stood on the edge of uncertainty, and instead of retreating, you stepped forward. That is vulnerability, and that is courage. We live in a society that often equates strength with control, with never flinching, with holding everything together no matter what. But real strength is not found in pretending you are invincible. Real strength is found in admitting you are human. There is a profound bravery in saying, "I don't know," in asking for help, or in confessing that you are struggling. Many people spend their entire lives hiding behind masks because they fear rejection. But what they don't realize is that the mask itself is what keeps them from real connection. Vulnerability tears down that barrier. It invites authenticity into the room. It allows others to see the raw truth of who you are, and in doing so, it creates the possibility for love, trust, and empathy to grow. When you refuse vulnerability, you also close yourself off from joy. To protect yourself from pain, you numb the possibility of happiness. You can't selectively shut down feelings. If you shut out grief, you also dim your capacity for laughter. If you bury shame, you also stifle creativity. Vulnerability is the gateway to living fully, because it requires you to embrace the entire spectrum of human experience. There is no art without vulnerability, No innovation without the risk of failure. No love without the risk of loss. Everything that makes life meaningful sits on the other side of that leap of courage. Think of a child learning to walk. They stumble, they fall, they cry, and then they rise again. Each step is vulnerable because it could end in failure, but it is also filled with bravery because the child keeps trying. In adulthood, we often forget this lesson. We let fear paralyze us. We choose safety over growth, silence over speaking, avoidance over confrontation. But in doing so, we sacrifice the very thing we are longing for, a life that feels real. Vulnerability is the path back to that realness. It is the permission slip to be imperfect, to be in progress, to be a work of art that is still unfolding. The irony is that most of us deeply admire vulnerability when we see it in others. We respect the person who tells their story with honesty, the leader who admits mistakes, the friend who cries openly, the artist who bears their soul on a canvas. We see that as courage because it is. But when it comes to ourselves, we label the same act as weakness. This double standard reveals more about our fear than it does about reality. If vulnerability is inspiring in others, why would it be shameful in us? The truth is, it is not shameful at all. It is the very quality that makes relationships real, that makes communities strong, and that makes human beings relatable. Of course, vulnerability is not without risk. To expose yourself is to invite the possibility of rejection, criticism, or failure. But courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite fear. You cannot be brave without risk. You cannot be strong without facing uncertainty. Vulnerability asks you to stand in the arena of life, knowing you may get knocked down, and still choosing to play. And in that choice, even when the outcome is not what you hoped for, you grow. You discover resilience, you learn, and you realize that rejection or failure does not define you. It refines you. Caring for your emotional health requires you to practice vulnerability daily. It might mean having an honest conversation with a loved one instead of keeping silent. It might mean reaching out when you feel lonely instead of pretending you are fine. It might mean admitting that you are not okay and allowing others to support you. These small acts accumulate. Over time, they strengthen your capacity for connection and resilience. Vulnerability becomes less terrifying when you realize that every time you step into it, you expand your courage. It is also important to understand that vulnerability is not recklessness. Being vulnerable does not mean oversharing with anyone and everyone. It does not mean exposing your deepest wounds to people who have not earned your trust. True vulnerability is intentional. It is about choosing authenticity in the right spaces, with the right people, and for the right reasons. It is not about performing. It is about connecting. It is not about demanding validation. It is about showing up honestly, regardless of the response. This discernment is part of the courage. You choose openness not because it guarantees a safe outcome, but because it aligns with who you are. At its core, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, creativity, belonging, and joy. Every meaningful human experience requires it. Imagine a world where no one risked rejection by saying, "I love you." Where no artist risked failure by sharing their work. Where no leader risked criticism by speaking truth. That world would be cold, empty, and stagnant. What brings warmth, connection, and growth into the world is precisely the willingness of people to show up and be seen even when the outcome is uncertain. Taking care of your emotional health means embracing this truth: your worth is not tied to perfection. You do not need to have everything figured out before you step forward. You do not need to hide your scars to be loved. You do not need to pretend to be invincible to be respected. Vulnerability allows you to accept yourself as you are, to extend compassion to your own heart, and to invite others to meet you where you truly stand. This acceptance, this courage to be real, is what frees you from the constant pressure to prove yourself. It gives you peace. It allows you to breathe. So the next time you are faced with the choice between silence and honesty, between hiding and showing up, between fear and courage, remember this. Vulnerability is not weakness. It never has been. It is courage in its purest form. It is the path to the life you are longing for. The life that feels authentic, connected, and alive. It may not protect you from pain, but it will open the door to meaning. And when you look back at your journey, you will see that the moments you dared to be vulnerable were not the times you were weakest. They were the times you were strongest. Boundaries are often misunderstood. Many people think of them as walls built to keep people out, but in reality, healthy boundaries are bridges. They are not about isolation, but about connection. They are the invisible lines that help you protect your time, your energy, your values, and your emotions, while still allowing you to engage with the world in meaningful ways. When you set a boundary, you are not rejecting others, you are affirming yourself. You are saying, this is where I end and you begin. This is what I can give and what I cannot. This is what honors me and what harms me. Without boundaries, emotional health erodes quickly because you allow others to dictate your inner world, and you lose the ability to protect your peace. Think about how often exhaustion, resentment, or frustration in your life has been tied to a lack of boundaries. You say yes when you mean no. You let people take advantage of your kindness. You absorb negativity from others because you are afraid to speak up. You stay silent to avoid conflict, even when something is weighing heavily on you. Over time, these small compromises compound. You feel drained, overwhelmed, even invisible, because you have taught people that your needs don't matter as much as theirs. That is the cost of boundarylessness. A slow decline in self-worth and a buildup of resentment that poisons your relationships. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect. It is telling yourself, I am worthy of being treated with care. My needs matter just as much as anyone else's. This shift is critical for emotional health, because if you do not honor your limits, you cannot expect others to. Boundaries must come from within. They are not about controlling other people, but about deciding what you will or will not allow in your life. For example, you cannot stop someone from speaking negatively, but you can decide not to engage in conversations that drain you. You cannot stop someone from overstepping, but you can decide to step back and remove yourself. The power of boundaries lies in choice. There is also a misconception that boundaries are selfish. Many people feel guilty for saying no, for turning down an invitation, or for declining extra responsibilities. But boundaries are not selfish. They are necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup. When you overextend yourself, when you give beyond your capacity, you don't just harm yourself. You harm others too, because you show up resentful, exhausted, and half-present. True generosity and true love come from a place of fullness. And that fullness is only possible when you protect your own emotional energy. Saying no to what drains you is actually saying yes to what allows you to thrive. And in that thriving, you are better able to give authentically. Boundaries also create safety in relationships. When people know your limits, they can trust your yes because they know you are not saying it out of guilt or obligation. A yes rooted in authenticity is much more powerful than a yes rooted in fear. Boundaries clarify expectations, reduce misunderstandings, and build trust. They allow you to connect honestly rather than pretending. For example, in a friendship, setting a boundary might look like saying, I can't talk every single day, but I value our connection and I'm here when it matters. That honesty prevents disappointment later and builds respect. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They are about letting people in on your terms, in ways that keep both sides healthy. The challenge with boundaries is that they often require courage. Saying no can feel terrifying, especially if you are a people pleaser or someone who fears rejection. It can feel like you are disappointing others, like you are risking their love or approval. But here's the truth: people who genuinely care about you will respect your boundaries, even if they don't always understand them right away. Those who resist or guilt you when you express your limits are often benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Their discomfort is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their expectation to have unlimited access to you. When you stand firm, you not only protect yourself, but also filter out relationships that are built on exploitation rather than respect. It is also worth noting that boundaries are not only external, but also internal. External boundaries deal with how others treat you, but internal boundaries deal with how you treat yourself. Do you allow yourself to rest, or do you push past exhaustion in the name of productivity? Do you protect your thoughts, or do you let self-criticism run wild in your mind? Do you regulate your own emotional reactions, or do you let every passing frustration consume you? Internal boundaries are just as vital as external ones, because emotional health depends not only on what others do to you, but on what you allow yourself to do to yourself. Self-discipline, self-kindness, and self-awareness are all forms of internal boundaries that nurture well-being. Boundaries also require consistency. It is not enough to set them once, you must reinforce them regularly. If you say no but later give in to pressure, people learn that your boundaries are negotiable. But if you stand firm kindly and consistently, people begin to respect them. Consistency is how boundaries transform from words into lived reality. This does not mean you must be rigid. Boundaries can evolve over time, but it does mean you must take them seriously if you expect others to do the same. Another important aspect of boundaries is recognizing that they are unique to each person. What feels acceptable to one individual may feel invasive to another. For instance, some people are comfortable sharing personal details of their lives with colleagues, while others prefer to keep work and personal life separate. Neither is wrong. It simply reflects different boundary needs. The key is to honor your own comfort level and to respect the boundaries of others without judgment. Emotional health thrives when there is mutual respect for differences. One of the greatest gifts of setting boundaries is the freedom it creates. Instead of feeling trapped in obligations, you reclaim your ability to choose. Instead of feeling suffocated by others' demands, you create space for your own priorities. This freedom is not about avoiding responsibility. It is about aligning your life with what truly matters. Boundaries allow you to direct your energy toward the relationships, goals, and values that nourish you, rather than scattering your energy on things that deplete you. That alignment is where peace and joy reside. Ultimately, boundaries are not about keeping people at a distance, but about inviting them into a healthier, more authentic relationship with you. They are about creating balance, clarity, and mutual respect. They are about protecting your emotional health so that you can show up as your best self, not a depleted version of yourself. They are about drawing a circle around your heart that says, I will care for you, but I will not abandon myself in the process. When you understand this, boundaries no longer feel like a burden. They feel like freedom. They are not something to fear, but something to embrace. They are a declaration that your well-being matters, that your voice matters, and that your peace matters. And when you live this truth, when you honor your limits and enforce your boundaries, you not only protect your emotional health, you model strength for others. You give them permission to do the same. In this way, boundaries are not selfish. They are a ripple of self-respect that extends outward, strengthening every connection in your life. They are a gift to yourself, and they are a gift to everyone who truly loves you. Shame is one of the most powerful and destructive emotions we can experience, and yet it is also one of the least understood. It operates in the shadows, whispering lies into the quiet corners of our minds, convincing us that we are not enough, that we are unworthy, that we are somehow defective in ways that make us unlovable. Shame is not the same as guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. It is not about behavior but about identity. And because it targets the core of who we believe ourselves to be, it can be suffocating. The reason shame is so dangerous is that it thrives in secrecy. It feeds off silence. The more we hide it, the stronger it becomes. When shame takes root, we often respond with withdrawal. We isolate ourselves because we fear judgment, rejection, or exposure. We think, if they knew this about me, they wouldn't love me. We wear masks of perfection, put on smiles while our hearts ache, and keep our struggles behind closed doors. This secrecy creates a breeding ground for shame to multiply. It festers in the dark. Gaining power each day, we leave it unspoken. The paradox is that what we fear most, being unloved if people knew the truth, is actually what deepens our loneliness and pain. We cut ourselves off from the very connection that could heal us. The antidote to shame is empathy, and the first step toward healing is breaking the silence. The moment we speak our shame, it begins to lose its grip. When we risk telling someone we trust about the things we fear make us unworthy, and they respond with understanding and compassion, shame cannot survive. Empathy is like light. It penetrates the darkness where shame hides and exposes it for what it is, a lie. The truth is that we all make mistakes, we all struggle, we all fall short. There is no human being on this earth who does not carry scars, regrets, or insecurities. To believe otherwise is to accept the illusion that perfection exists. Empathy reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles. Connection reminds us that being human is enough. Think of the times when you finally confessed something you were ashamed of to a trusted friend, a counselor, or a loved one. At first, it probably felt terrifying, like stepping off a cliff. But once the words left your mouth, didn't you feel lighter? Didn't you discover that the shame that seemed so overwhelming in your head lost some of its power once it was spoken aloud? That is because shame cannot survive exposure to compassion. It dissolves when we are met with the warmth of human understanding. Even if the problem itself does not disappear immediately, the weight of carrying it alone is lifted. Empathy also requires courage on both sides. The person sharing their shame must be brave enough to open up, and the person receiving must be compassionate enough to listen without judgment. This is why choosing the right people to share with matters. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. Some people respond with criticism, dismissal, or even exploitation, which only deepens the wound. But when you find the right people, those who respond with kindness and respect, you find healing. Empathy does not mean fixing someone's problem or offering solutions. It means sitting with them in their pain and saying, I hear you. I see you. You are not alone. That presence is often more powerful than any advice. Shame also loses power through collective empathy. When we see others share their struggles publicly, whether in art, in writing, or in conversations, it gives us permission to do the same. Stories are healing because they connect us through shared humanity. They remind us that our pain is not unique, that our flaws do not isolate us, and that others have walked similar paths and survived. When people speak openly about their mistakes, their vulnerabilities, and their hardships, they dismantle the culture of silence that shame depends on. Every story of survival is a crack in the wall of secrecy. Every act of courage to share creates space for another person to heal. Another important truth is that shame cannot coexist with self-compassion. Many of us are quick to show empathy to others but cruel to ourselves. We replay our mistakes, berate ourselves, and hold ourselves to impossible standards. But self-compassion is about treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a friend. Imagine someone you love deeply came to you with the very thing you are ashamed of. Would you condemn them? Or would you comfort them, reassure them, remind them that they are still worthy, Why then do we deny ourselves the same grace? Learning to speak to yourself with compassion is one of the most powerful tools in dismantling shame. Shame also loses strength when we name it. When you say out loud, "I feel ashamed of this," you take control of the emotion rather than letting it control you. Naming it separates you from it. It becomes something you are experiencing, not something you are. Instead of, "I am unworthy," it becomes, "I am feeling shame because of this situation." That shift is powerful because it reclaims your identity. You are not your shame. You are a human being experiencing it, and like all emotions, it can pass. Healing from shame is not a one-time event but a process. It requires continual practice of openness, empathy, and connection. Each time you share your story, each time you choose honesty over secrecy, shame loses a little more of its hold. Each time you listen to someone else's pain without judgment, you help dismantle their shame as well. Empathy is a cycle. It heals both the giver and the receiver. It deepens bonds, builds trust, and creates communities where people can truly be themselves without fear of rejection. We must also understand that cultural and societal messages often feed shame. Messages about how we should look, act, succeed, or live create impossible standards. When we don't measure up, shame creeps in. Recognizing these external pressures is essential because it helps us realize that shame is not always born from personal failure, but from unrealistic expectations. By challenging these messages and embracing authenticity, we take back power. We remind ourselves that worthiness is not conditional. It is inherent. At its core, shame wants you to believe that you must hide to be safe. But the opposite is true. Hiding keeps you in chains. Healing begins when you dare to step into the light, when you risk being seen, when you invite empathy into your story. Emotional health is nurtured not in isolation, but in connection. When you allow others to meet you in your vulnerability, you find not only healing but freedom. You learn that you were never unworthy. You were only carrying a lie that lost its power the moment you spoke it. So remember this: shame thrives in secrecy, but it dies in the light of empathy. When you choose to speak instead of staying silent, when you choose compassion instead of criticism, when you choose connection instead of isolation, you reclaim your emotional health. You are not broken. You are not defined by your mistakes or flaws. You are human, and humanity is not about perfection. It is about connection. And connection fueled by empathy is where healing begins. When we think of resilience, many people picture toughness, grit, or an almost unshakable ability to endure whatever life throws at them without flinching. But the truth is, resilience is not about being hard on yourself or pretending that pain doesn't exist. True resilience is not forged in the fires of self-criticism, but in the gentle embrace of self-compassion. It is easy to be kind to yourself when life is going well, when successes are abundant, and when you feel in control. The real test of emotional resilience comes in moments of failure, heartbreak, rejection, and loss. And in those moments, the way you speak to yourself determines whether you break down or rise again. Self-compassion is the foundation upon which resilience is built, because it provides the inner strength to face difficulty without collapsing under the weight of your own harsh judgment. Self-compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and patience that you would offer to someone you deeply love. It is a shift in perspective, a decision to recognize your humanity instead of condemning it. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that being hard on ourselves is the path to improvement. We tell ourselves, if I push harder, if I criticize more, if I don't let myself off the hook, I'll finally become better. But this mindset only deepens wounds. It fuels shame, insecurity, and exhaustion. Criticism may spark temporary motivation, but it rarely sustains growth. Compassion, on the other hand, creates a safe internal space where you can fail, learn, and rise again. It says, I made a mistake, but I am not a mistake. I fell short, but I am still worthy. That voice allows you to keep moving forward instead of giving up under the weight of self-condemnation. When life brings inevitable challenges, resilience is not about avoiding pain, but about how you respond to it. Self-compassion transforms pain into growth by allowing you to acknowledge it without letting it define you. For example, imagine losing a job. Without self-compassion, your inner dialogue might sound like, "I'm worthless, I'll never succeed, I've ruined everything." This narrative does not build resilience. It destroys it. With self-compassion, however, your response shifts. "This hurts, it's hard, but it doesn't mean I'm unworthy. Many people go through this, and I can learn and rebuild." That small but profound difference in self-talk changes the trajectory of your recovery. It keeps you from spiraling into hopelessness and empowers you to take constructive action. Emotional resilience also requires endurance. And endurance comes not from self-punishment, but from self-support. Think of a marathon runner. If the runner berates themselves with every step, "You're slow, you're weak, you'll never make it," their energy depletes faster. If instead they encourage themselves, "This is tough, but you're doing your best, keep going," they tap into inner reserves of strength. The same principle applies in everyday life. Encouragement, not criticism, sustains resilience. Self-compassion is the fuel that keeps you moving even when the path is steep. Another dimension of self-compassion is recognizing our common humanity. Struggle is not a sign that something is uniquely wrong with you. It is a sign that you are human. Everyone experiences pain, disappointment, and failure. When you accept this, you stop isolating yourself in the belief that you are the only one falling short. Isolation intensifies suffering. Connection eases it. By reminding yourself, "I am not alone in this, others have been here too," you soften the blow of hardship and feel empowered to continue. This awareness strengthens resilience by helping you see setbacks not as evidence of your inadequacy, but as part of the shared human journey. Self-compassion also changes how you relate to your inner critic. That harsh voice in your head may try to convince you that cruelty will make you stronger. But resilience comes not from silencing the critic completely, but from balancing it with compassion. You learn to hear the voice of doubt and then respond with a kinder one. For example, when your critic says, "You failed," your compassionate voice can respond, "Yes, but failing doesn't mean I am a failure. This is an opportunity to grow." Over time, the compassionate voice becomes louder, steadier, and more reliable, giving you strength in difficult moments. What's more, self-compassion creates emotional safety. When you know you will not tear yourself apart for making mistakes, you are more willing to take risks, to step outside your comfort zone, and to pursue new opportunities. This willingness is the essence of resilience, because resilience is not just about surviving difficulties, but about continuing to engage with life despite the possibility of failure. Without self-compassion, fear of judgment, especially self-judgment, paralyzes you. With it, you become braver, more open, and more willing to keep trying. There is also a physical component to this. Research has shown that self-compassion reduces stress by calming the body's nervous system. When you are harsh with yourself, your body reacts as if it is under attack. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your mind floods with fear. But when you respond with kindness, your body relaxes. This physiological calm gives you more clarity and strength to respond constructively. In this way, self-compassion is not just emotional. It is biological. It literally changes the way your body processes stress, making you more resilient in the face of adversity. In practical terms, self-compassion can be practiced through mindful awareness. Mindfulness allows you to notice your pain without amplifying it. Instead of getting lost in harsh thoughts, you observe them and respond with kindness. For instance, when you notice yourself thinking, "I'll never get through this," Mindfulness helps you pause, breathe, and shift to, this is hard, but I am doing the best I can. That pause, that shift, is resilience being built in real time. It may seem small, but small acts of compassion practiced consistently become habits, and habits shape who you become. Self-compassion also influences how quickly you recover from setbacks. Resilient people are not those who never fall. They are those who rise more quickly after falling. When you practice compassion, you shorten the time between falling and rising. Instead of lingering in self-blame, you move more quickly into problem solving and healing. You give yourself permission to feel the pain, but you do not let the pain define you. This capacity to rise again and again is the essence of resilience. It is important to note that self-compassion does not mean avoiding responsibility or excusing harmful behavior. On the contrary, it allows you to take responsibility more effectively because you are not paralyzed by shame. You can acknowledge mistakes honestly, make amends, and learn without collapsing under the weight of self-loathing. Self-compassion empowers accountability by separating the behavior from your identity. You can admit, I did wrong, without believing, I am wrong at my core. This clear-eyed perspective strengthens resilience because it turns mistakes into lessons rather than prisons. Ultimately, self-compassion is the soil in which resilience grows. Without it, the storms of life uproot you easily because your foundation is fragile, built on conditional self-worth and harsh inner dialogue. With it, you become like a tree with deep roots, bent but not broken by the winds of difficulty. Self-compassion grounds you in the truth that your worth does not depend on success or perfection. It is inherent, unchanging, and present even in your lowest moments. From that place of inner security, you can face challenges with courage, recover from setbacks, and continue forward with hope. So remember, resilience is not about never falling. It is about how you rise. And the way you rise depends on how you treat yourself when you are down. If you respond with cruelty, you weaken yourself. If you respond with compassion, you strengthen yourself. Self-compassion is not indulgence, it is not weakness, and it is not an excuse. It is the foundation of resilience, the quiet but powerful force that allows you to keep moving, keep growing, and keep living fully, no matter what life places in your path. Relationships are built not on perfection or constant harmony, but on the ability to have honest and courageous conversations. It is easy to speak when everything is going well, when there is agreement, and when there are no risks involved. The true test of a relationship's depth comes when difficult truths need to be spoken, when boundaries must be asserted, when misunderstandings arise, or when silence feels easier than honesty. In those moments, choosing to lean into the discomfort of a courageous conversation is what allows relationships to grow stronger and trust to deepen. Avoiding such conversations may feel safer in the short term, but it builds walls of resentment and distance over time. What you refuse to say does not disappear. It festers in silence and eventually erodes connection. A courageous conversation begins with the decision to value truth over comfort. It means being willing to say what needs to be said even when your voice shakes, even when you fear rejection or conflict. For example, telling a friend that their words hurt you, confronting a partner about a recurring issue, admitting when you feel neglected, or sharing your authentic feelings instead of brushing them aside are all acts of bravery. The easy path is to remain silent, to suppress the discomfort, and to pretend everything is fine. But silence is not peace, it is avoidance. Peace only comes when honesty is present, because only honesty can resolve the root of tension. Trust is not built on pretending, it is built on consistency and authenticity. When you speak honestly, even when it is hard, you show others that they can rely on you to be real. People trust those who are willing to tell them the truth, not just what they want to hear. While honesty may create temporary discomfort, it prevents the long-term damage that comes from deception or unspoken resentment. Over time, courageous conversations establish a foundation of trust so strong that both parties know they can handle the truth together. They may not always agree, but they can always trust each other's integrity. Courageous conversations also invite intimacy. To share your truth, especially when it is vulnerable, is to let someone see a deeper layer of who you are. Saying, "I feel hurt when you dismiss my feelings," or "I need more support in this season of my life," opens a window into your emotional world. This transparency creates opportunities for greater understanding and closeness. When you risk honesty, you invite the other person to do the same. Vulnerability inspires vulnerability, and before long, the relationship deepens beyond surface-level interaction. What could have remained hidden becomes a bridge to greater connection. Of course, courageous conversations are not easy because they come with risk. You cannot control how the other person will respond. They may become defensive, dismissive, or even reject your truth. But the alternative, burying your feelings and sacrificing your authenticity, causes even greater harm. When you silence yourself, you betray your own needs and values, which breeds bitterness and distance. Courage means accepting that risk is part of connection. Without risk, there is no real intimacy, only polite distance. Relationships that matter are worth the discomfort of honesty, because only honesty can sustain them through the challenges of life. These conversations also require listening. Courageous communication is not about dominating with your truth, but about creating a space where both voices can be heard. It requires humility, patience, and empathy. To enter a conversation courageously means being willing not only to express yourself, but also to hear what the other person has to say, even if it is difficult for you. Many conflicts are not about one side being entirely right and the other entirely wrong. They are about two perspectives that need to be understood and reconciled. Listening is as brave as speaking, because it demands openness to growth and change. Another essential aspect of courageous conversations is timing and intention. These conversations should not be fueled by rage or a desire to wound. They should be guided by a commitment to clarity, healing, and connection. Choosing the right moment and entering with a spirit of respect transforms confrontation into collaboration. When your intention is not to attack but to strengthen the relationship, the conversation, even if painful, becomes an act of love. Saying, "I value this relationship enough to be honest," is one of the highest forms of respect you can show another person. It is also important to realize that avoiding difficult conversations does not protect relationships. It weakens them. Consider a partnership where one person consistently feels unseen but never voices it. Over time, they begin to withdraw, to lose affection, to harbor resentment. Eventually, the relationship suffers not because of the issue itself, but because of the silence around it. The longer the silence, the harder it becomes to bridge the gap. By contrast, addressing issues as they arise may cause temporary conflict, but it prevents wounds from festering. Like pulling out a thorn, it hurts in the moment but saves greater pain later. Courageous conversations also shape your own emotional health. When you silence yourself, you internalize stress. Your body carries the weight of unspoken truth. Your mind replays scenarios, crafting imaginary dialogues that never leave your lips. This mental and emotional burden drains your energy. Speaking your truth, even if imperfectly, frees you. It releases the tension of carrying hidden pain and allows you to live more authentically. Every courageous conversation strengthens not only your relationships, but also your own sense of integrity and self-respect. It is also worth noting that courage grows with practice. The first difficult conversation may feel terrifying, but each time you choose honesty, you build inner strength. You learn that you can survive discomfort, that conflict does not mean the end of connection, and that truth spoken with compassion often brings people closer rather than pushing them away. Over time, courageous conversations become less of a threat and more of a natural part of healthy connection. They stop being something to fear and start being something to embrace. Courageous conversations are not just for personal relationships. They matter in professional and community settings as well. Workplaces thrive when people can voice concerns, admit mistakes, and give feedback honestly. Communities grow stronger when people address injustice, speak out against harm, and share perspectives openly. Silence in these spaces allows toxicity to spread. Honesty, though uncomfortable, clears the air and paves the way for solutions. Wherever people come together, courageous conversations are the glue that holds trust intact. In the end, relationships do not thrive on avoidance or on keeping the peace at the expense of truth. They thrive when people are willing to step into discomfort for the sake of love, respect, and authenticity. Courageous conversations are not about winning or losing. They are about building. They are about saying, I care enough to tell you the truth. I care enough to hear your truth. And I care enough to work through the hard things with you rather than walk away from them. So when the moment comes when silence feels easier, but honesty feels necessary, remember that what you choose will shape the future of the relationship. If you choose silence, you may protect temporary comfort, but sacrifice long-term connection. If you choose courage, you may face discomfort, but you give the relationship a chance to deepen and strengthen in ways silence never could. Trust is born in honesty, and honesty requires courage. And it is only through courageous conversations that we build relationships capable of standing the tests of time, challenge, and change.